John Freeman here. I cover the equities of companies in the software industry, the video game industry, and a couple of other software-based businesses here for CFRA. In this video, we're going to introduce our 16 rules of investing in software-based businesses, and we're going to cover the first two. So the first rule is no rules. Stop following, lists of rules. I mean, I love them personally, but y'all might be familiar with the term listicle. That's an article structured as a numbered list, often counting up to number one in order to hold the reader's attention. So, the top 8 restaurants in Yokohama, the top 20 top 20 face slaps at the Oscars, or top 20 face slaps on the Maury Povich show, or the top 10 wrestlers from the former Soviet Union. Ivan Yarygin is my personal favorite, but I digress. But the most addictive sort of scroll-inducing structure of articles on the internet is most definitely the list of rules. And we have so many sets of rules. There's a set of rules for everything in your life. There's 32 rules for your best TikTok, 16 rules for surviving a zombie apocalypse, 12 steps to having, the best time at Ibiza, 14 ways to take out a T-80 tank. Okay, I give you the top. I give you the top 3. First is the Turkish TB2 drones. Coming in at number 2 is the Javelin missile. Thank you, Raytheon and Martin and Lockheed Martin. But the number 1 way to take out a T-80 tank is, drumroll please, Ukrainian tractors. All right. Then you got 48 rules of power, and then of mastery, and then of money. And I mean, I've heard there are more rule list books published about personal finance than there are grains of sand on planet Earth. So don't get me wrong, I love lists of rules. Many of them work really well for lots of people, and for me, for many other things. And it makes sense to outsource cognition, or simply just simplify the operations of so many different areas of our lives. However, the most challenging and worthwhile things in life cannot be attained by only following rules. This includes mastering the craft of analyzing and valuing equities, especially of software-based businesses that are so dynamic and that change so rapidly. And where, over the last 3, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40-year horizon, whatever you want, the magnitude of returns and the global ubiquity of what software has been able to achieve, and the disruption that it can cause to existing industries continues to surprise us. But much of that shouldn't really surprise us. While we don't want rigid rules, we definitely want to be better than a dice roll. So, and in software, it may be, complicated and rapidly changing, but there are many things you can see coming from a long way off. And if you look closer and learn the patterns and trends of the software industry, you might even be able to figure out how it's going to unfold. Here's the thing though. While the software industry, has never changed faster than it is changing right now. Software is now also changing industry, right? All industry. In fact, it's hard to think of a human endeavor that is unimpacted by software. There's a great quotation from Bill Gates on this very issue of software, and taking over all these endeavors and taking over more and more of aspects of business. It says, information technology and business are becoming inextricably interwoven. I don't think anybody can talk meaningfully about one without talking about the other. This is interesting. He said this from 1999. Right. So the irony though here is that, if you get really good at following rules, eventually you become really bad at picking stocks. How fast that happens depends on the pace of change, which again, has never seemed faster for all of human endeavors, and certainly business, and especially software-based businesses, right? So we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of why that's the case and the conclusions that we can draw. But as comforting, as these time-tested or any time-tested set of rules may seem these days, I think you have to be wondering, how up to date is your time test, right? Right. So does your investment criteria incorporate the profound changes in business and profound innovations that we've been seeing over the past few decades, driven by software? So the problem with following sets of rules in order to try to invest in the software industry, is that, or anything really in investing, in equity investing, but especially those areas that change so rapidly. The problem is the rules aren't exogenous, right? Over time they respond and evolve while you follow them, as does the market, right? Any rule that begins to produce a profit attracts more and more market participants, and whose actions, exploiting the rule will steadily dislodge the correlations between the rule and the market behavior, right? Eventually saps the rule of any predictive value, if it ever had one to begin with, right? I thought Eric Schmidt is the former CEO of Alphabet, Google, now Alphabet. He made a really good argument in this quotation against strict rule following as a way to understand the future of the technology industry. He said the future doesn't just happen. It's not etched or written or coded anywhere. There's no algorithm or formula that says technology will do X, so Y is sure to happen. So what I was aiming for here, not really rules, supposedly, right, but something like Ray Dalio's Principles, the book that he wrote about investing. And as an aside, it is one of the very few books that talks not just about investing, but about making investment decisions as part of a team, and how that team should operate, and how to manage its members. Managing a team of investment professionals, especially one focused on the equities of software-based businesses or any fast-growing companies, is challenging, right? It's a different animal really compared to managing in teams in most other situations, especially different from within financial services, where you also have services and industries like banking and insurance, right, where you do not want you can't really have much dissent, but in successful investment teams thrive on passionate, respectful dissent, right, and encouraging cooperation without encouraging groupthink, promoting a unified focus, with a key mechanism of that focus being healthy debate and the pros and cons of a proposed investment action. Striking that balance is really hard. That balance between the continuous state of dissent, focused on making the best investment decisions, and improving the process, right, for making those decisions, right? You can't have the rules aren't going to, right, stay the same, so you have to proactively adjust them so that they are sort of always there. They are always relevant and always helpful. That's the idea behind any of this stuff, is to be helpful to make you have better investment decisions. The only other book, by the way, that I'm aware of that addresses the problem of managing investment teams in any depth is called High Performing Investment Teams by Jim Ware and Jim Detmer. Those two books, Principles and Ware and Detmer's book, I think are the only ones that really go into depth, but I'd be interested to see if there are others out there that I have missed. So what I was really, aiming for here is just, just a list of things to think about. Obviously not rules, but they have to be in a list. I put them in a list, right? So they have context, and I had to sort of organize my ideas a little bit, right? And otherwise, like the universe without the ordered progression of time, everything happens all at once, and all my ideas would just occur, would just occur all at once. So, so I put them in a list, and that's so I was really looking for something that's, I don't know, looser than Ray Dalio's principles, what he laid out in his books, but a little looser and more prospective than that. And then, but tighter than the Tao Te Ching, right? Which is the one of the I love that book, and it's one of the fundamental texts of the religious philosophy of Taoism, which the influence of which can be seen in Zen Buddhism, etc. So rather than think of them as rules, let's think of them as frameworks or mental models, kind of modes of thinking. I use them sort of as metaphors that help me understand, that have helped me understand sort of what's really going on, because software is complicated, but it's also you have to talk about it in terms of abstraction, and sometimes that can lead to just a bunch of gobbledygook that has no meaning at all. So you got to be careful about your word choices, I think, when you're talking about software, and I certainly try to do that. But metaphors, nevertheless, are helpful in terms of trying to understand what's really going on. So I guess these are you know at best, I guess these are 8 descriptions of historical patterns, maybe that you can rely on. You can't rely on to repeat, but maybe they'll rhyme, and maybe that'll help you figure out, or what the next lyric is, or whatever, right? And figure out how to give you some insight in terms of how the software industry will unfold. And I guess at worst case scenario, these are just some things to think about when you're trying to pick stocks while following somebody else's rules.
To read all of John Freeman's 16 Rules of Investing in Software-Based Businesses, please visit advisor.marketscope.com, or to learn more about CFRA research, visit cfraresearch.com.